Amazon was the first thing that worked to the point where it was like, this thing worked without me. It actually had the passive nature to it. I mean, you remember this day. We were sitting at a wedding. We had built the Amazon business and we pulled out our phone, looked at it, and we had made more on Amazon than we had made at the wedding.
All right, folks, welcome back to the High Voltage Business Builders podcast. As always, if you hear me say once before, I want to see more of it. Comment, like, engage, and share on all channels. Help us beat big tech. I don't care if you tell me you hate the podcast today. I don't care if you say I look funny. It doesn't matter. Put a comment in. Help me engage. Help get this out so the audience today can hear about what's going on. If you're a mamapreneur, if you thought about doing it, if you wanted to get online, if lifestyle as a business is something you're sincerely wanting to understand how to do, then the couple today on this show is going to help you understand how that process looks for them, their boys, and how they've been building it with a specific focus of helping moms transition into becoming entrepreneurs. Guys, welcome to the call.
Thanks, Neil. Excited to be here.
Right on. Okay, so unpacking that for those of you who are listening to this call at the moment, if you are a guy, sorry, you're going to have to leave. This is not for you. No, I'm kidding. Your specific area is in focusing with moms, correct? And helping them kind of generate a beginning, an entrepreneur, side hustle, a full-time business in the space of Amazon and e-com?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely. And when we started, we weren't focused on moms. We were just, Amazon sellers ourselves. We were just excited about it. We kind of became Amazon evangelists, telling whoever would listen, and honestly, our first client, in air quotes, was my mom. So
okay, keep it in the family. That's awesome.
You're around the dinner table. You're like, this thing's really working. This is so cool. My mom's like pretty scrappy and techie. And so she's like, let me do it, and ended up being mostly me doing her business. But like she put 2 products out on Amazon. And that was like our first kind of case study. We're talking to a mentor because we had the Amazon side of things, but we also really felt like, man, more people need to know about Amazon and about this entrepreneurial vehicle and the leverage it gives you. And we had a mentor kind of encourage us to look at, who's really winning with it in your world, right? Because I feel like you have like I call it everyone needs their flavor, right? Of mentor. And like you have a flavor that some people really need. And then we have a flavor that some people really need. And It's so funny how we'll do this to each other where it's like, oh my gosh, I heard this person on Instagram say this amazing thing. And Chelsea's like, I've been telling you that for 3 years, but I needed to hear it from the right person.
Listening and hearing, dude. You should know that now.
I know.
Our wives can tell us all about the differences between listening and hearing.
Yes. So we found that the people that were really resonating with our message was moms. It was families. It was, awesome. Entrepreneurs that wanted to protect lifestyle and not I know, too, like there's a lot of bros in the Amazon space with the Lamborghinis and the bikinis, and it just wasn't our flavor, especially, in that early days. So we were like, let's attract people that want family freedom.
And Lamborghinis and bikinis. I hadn't heard that phrase together. I always put it with the Lambros. Because I've never seen a Lambro in a bikini because maybe I'm not on the right part of the internet. And that's not a part of the internet I want to go to. But there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of myths in the world of Amazon, e-com, and even helping people and what it means to help people. What are you hearing? And if someone was listening, what would you want to unpack for them in that, the myth category?
Man, I think the biggest thing is this is what I think we've learned from probably doing it right and doing it wrong, right? And it's you want to be mentored by people that you would trade lives with them, right? And I think a lot of people want to show flashy stuff on the screen, but really if you dig into it, they haven't done the deep work to really sustain those things, or they're really missing out or just trying to fill holes in their life. And so we have really tried to surround ourselves with mentors who their marriage is awesome, their kids' relationship is great, they're thriving in not just business but all areas of our life. And that's really helped us out, is just kind of filtering through, because there's a lot of stuff online, and it's not to say this works and this doesn't work. I think a lot of people like to throw rocks, but I think it's important. We're really big believers in what you carry will kind of reflect in those you lead. And we've definitely seen that in our community as we grow in our marriage. The business gets stronger, right? As we grow in our parenthood, the way we manage our team gets stronger. And so I think business is one of the, outside of marriage, probably one of the greatest transformation vehicles for personal development. It really brings out that, and e-commerce especially, because there's just, there's headaches and there's interesting things, and it forces you into that kind of transformation, or or exit, right? Like
some people are listening to this going, I would never put my spouse in business with me.
Mhm.
What do you say to that? I mean, because there's business and there's business partners. And I like to say you can't do a good deal with a bad partner. And you can take a great deal with a bad partner and completely destroy it. What is your thoughts on that when people are thinking, hey, I don't necessarily think this is, can I do it myself? Do I have to do it with somebody? Is there a positive and negative in getting the other family members involved in the business?
I mean, Stephen and I have always run businesses together. We started out, we were wedding photographers. We jumped in right together. We've never known anything but working together. However, I don't think like you have to be in business with your spouse or have to have a business partner to be successful. Like, I don't think that, but I think like learning to lean on other people's strengths. So if you will find yourself in his position, especially as you grow and scale, like you'll need team, you'll need people that are like have other strengths than you. And so I think beyond I think it's not just a conversation of should my spouse be involved? It's more of just like, who am I going to have? Like, who am I going to be hiring? Can I trust them? Do they have skills that I don't have? And can I amplify their, like what they're really good at? I think that's one of the things I didn't do so well in the beginning in our businesses is I focused so much on mine and Steven's differences. And it was always like trying to pull him over to me. Like, can you just see things the way I do? Can you just be more realistic in this way? And as soon as I stopped that, pulling him over to my side and had this epiphany of like, wow, like it's so good that we're different and that we operate differently. I think you can look at it the same with whoever you decide to hire or have in your corner or have outsourcing or pull a team member in or a partner later down in the line, if that's what you choose to do. Is like, are their strengths something that call you up and make you see things differently? And not only does Steven and I, do we do that for each other, but then we've surrounded ourselves with team and with coaches and with people that sometimes think differently. And not everything we agree on 100%, but it's just like, oh, I can see that I need this. This is a missing piece that I'm not strong in. And so I think that's more important to look at, like, where are their strengths and do I need that and where I'm going?
Yeah, man, that's very smart. So and that's great. Thank you for that insight because it gives me a perspective from kind of where you both are. And in roles wise, how have you sort of structured that together in your business? I'm assuming you're still operating a business along with everything you're doing. And how do you kind of structure that balance? Who does what kind of in the business?
Yeah,
definitely trial and error in the beginning. I mean, like Chelsea said, we've been entrepreneurs together, and so it's changed in different. It's this wedding industry photography thing. Then it was Amazon. Then it was like Amazon and coaching, and now we're building personal brands. And like, so we're always kind of refining that. Like, what's your superpower? And then sometimes the other person fills in the gaps, and sometimes neither of us have what it takes, and now we need team around it. So I think that was a big struggle in the early days of our marriage. Was we would both share the responsibility of something, like, hey, we're both going to manage the inbox, right? And then it's always the other person's fault if it's like not getting handled. And so as soon as we start to separate roles and go like, I mean, honestly, if you're an earlier stage entrepreneur, I think one of the best advice I've heard is just like create an org chart actually for your business and put your name on every single one of those things, right? And sales, marketing, fulfillment, like all the different departments. And as you grow, you can kind of see like, oh, you know what? Like maybe it is your wife. She fits really good in this area, like HR and customer support, right? And that's her superpower. That's what lights her up, gives her life, and maybe doesn't fit anywhere on there. But as you kind of grow, you start to go, okay, these are the areas that it's not really the best use of my time. I need to level up and then bringing people on to those areas. So I think for this, it's been a learning, growing process of like constantly reevaluating. Are we in our strengths? And are we optimizing our time? I find myself all the time working on stuff where I'm like, this is not the best use of my time. This should be Chelsea, and vice versa.
And in that flow and learning and growing and adapting in your relationship and your business and personal life, what has that meant to you? Like since 2017, maybe give me a quick insight into what you were doing prior to that with the wedding and stuff, and what was your time like versus how has it changed now? Pros and cons for people who are listening, right? Because everybody was like, well, you're saying everything is so nice, but where's the real bad stuff? Where's the real challenges, right?
Yeah. I mean, in 2017, we were pretty full swing in shooting weddings. So we'd be on the weekends every Saturday. We live in Chico, California, super hot, 110 degree weddings. We'd be shooting these things with our cameras out there. Sweating weddings,
Sweating weddings.
You
and you and the groom, right?
we love we love the creative part of it. I think
Yeah.
what drew us to weddings was it was creative. We were good at it. And also the legacy piece. We love that we could like shoot a photo, and that photo, like we'd say it when we're taking photos, like this is for the grandkids, like there's something about that was really special. And I think that's why we were always drawn to it. It was like creative and it was legacy. But I think what we realized was when you are the person doing the job, you're always going to be limited. And so we kind of scaled that business in air quotes. It was our names on the business. So like we only could scale ourselves so far. And we had a season we shot, it was like 43 weddings. And I know there's probably some photographers who shoot more than that, but 43 for us was a lot. And it was, it's during wedding season, which is only like a handful of months. And so that was like 8 weddings in May, right? Just like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So literally no life. And we weren't outsourcing anything at the time. We weren't outsourcing editing or emails. So it was like constantly nonstop. And really was that point of burnout. And it was in that season we read a book, and the book it wasn't even about this, but it had this random analogy about a vine, and a vine being overextended. And when a vine is overextended, it just will stop growing fruit. Like it just won't grow any more fruit, and you need to trim the vine. And there was just something about it we just knew in that season, like we were overextended. There was no more fruit. Friends stopped calling us, family stopped calling us. You're so busy, like, posting on Instagram all the time. People think we have this glamorous life, but we are really hitting that moment of like, this is it. We can't go any further. And I think beyond that, we were also like thinking ahead, like, hey, why don't we see any older wedding photographers? And, how are we going to do this with a family, with kids?
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't have kids at the time. And so we were dreaming about that. We knew that was in our future. We love the legacy of that, but there was like, it just felt like we were stuck. And so that's what put me on the side hustle like train of like trying to chase the mythical beast of passive income around the internet. And so if you name it, I've probably like bought it and gone through the webinar and done all this stuff. And so Chelsea kept the business running. So that was her strength, consistency. And my strength was like kind of the ADD internet, like side hustle. And so like I was just starting businesses on the side. And Amazon was really one of the things we tried. And it's not like everything didn't work. It was the frustrating thing was that everything kind of did work. But Amazon was the first thing that worked to the point where it was like, this thing worked without me. Yeah. And I think looking back, I didn't have the maturity to realize when I was getting into opportunities, it was actually just like overextending the vine more and asking more of my time. But Amazon was the first thing that actually had that leverage piece to it, the passive nature to it. Where it was, you remember this day at the wedding. We were sitting at a wedding. We had built the Amazon business. We had a couple products online at that time. And we, at weddings, you get one break and it's basically dinner, And so the couple's eating, you kind of hide in the corner and eat off your lap. And we pulled out our phone, looked at it, and we had made more on Amazon than we had made at the wedding. And top line revenue, of course, but still seeing that number on the seller app and just going like, whoa, like we
priority shift.
Yeah. We didn't ship a product. We yes, we did work up until that point. Yeah. But that was it, I think, where it clicked for Chelsea, especially. I was kind of definitely doing this at night and pretty into it. But I think for her, that was like
I had felt like we called our winter season, those months where things were a little bit slower. I just felt like the weight of the world, like on my shoulders, like, how are we going to get ahead? How are we going to have a family? And I knew, like, I had seen Steven like explore different opportunities and always support him. Cause I just think I would always say like, you're a creative genius. You figure out these tech things, like you're a trendsetter, all of that. So I knew that he was like onto something, but I just didn't see like the belief yet. And I wasn't okay with just having a bunch of product in our garage, having to pack and ship it. Cause we had also tried that, like just launching a random brand and having no way of really marketing it. And I just was frustrated with that. And I kind of thought what we were doing would eventually turn into that. And so for me, like Steven said, being at that wedding, eating our food, looking at each other, checking this app, it was like really the first time I felt that weight actually lift off of my shoulders. And as I look back on that moment now, I feel like the weight wasn't just the weight of our family, but it was like all these other families that we are now impacting as well. Yeah. And especially women wanting security, wanting to own a business that they love. And I just think like, e-commerce is such an amazing opportunity in so many ways to build a product that you love, to connect with your audience, to solve a problem. Like, how amazing is that?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, ever since then, that was like my epiphany moment. That was like my belief in like this method that I can really go all in.
Yeah. Awesome. How did you discover your first, and I don't need to know the products, but how did you discover your first product? What were they, just something you just fell into?
Man, I feel like when I look back, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like it's miraculous, you know, like, cause it was totally like an accident, really. We were in the wedding video photography world. And so we found this niche. We were doing Kickstarter videos, like on the side of weddings. Cause like, hey, these products need videos and they paid well. Right. So we would do these Kickstarter videos. And I was always just like, how do people make products? Like I had a list on my phone of like product ideas, you know, I'm just like, I'm always thinking of stuff like that. And so it must have been, I don't know what year, 2015, 2016. It was like, we're just going to figure this out. Like, I want to figure out how to make a physical product. I don't care if I get scammed. Like, I've heard about this thing called Alibaba. I don't know. And so that year, I think for Christmas, Chelsea got me a wooden kendama. It's like a Japanese toy. It's like ball and cup. You catch the ball in the cup. Yeah. And so like, I promptly got addicted to this thing. I'd keep it on my desk and like try to like catch the ball in the cup and do tricks and stuff. And that's when it kind of clicked. I was like, this is it. Cause like the people that are into kendama, it's one of those niches, like, you know, those hobbies that no one really knows about, but the people that are into it, they're like fanatical.
Sword juggling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like kendama is one of those things. And so there's this whole like subculture, and it's kind of like, I was like, this is it. It's the safest, perfect little niche to launch in, because
those are great.
They don't get a lot of new brands, right? Like when there's a new brand on the scene, it's like, dang, like everyone wants to buy it. And so that was the grand experiment that year, is like, let's just try to launch a product to the kendama world. And we basically launched on Instagram. We made an Instagram account, and, you know, I was kind of the demographic. It was like 13 to 18-year-old boys, you know, and they're just on Instagram and doing tricks. And so we grew an Instagram account and then launched the product through that. So at that time, we were just shipping out of the house after, you know, editing the weddings. We'd pack, you know, bags and ship them out. And then we heard about Amazon. I think it was on a podcast. So yeah, all the way full circle. Now we're doing a podcast, right, about Amazon. And it was kind of like that light bulb moment when I heard about FBA. It was like, oh, wait. The stuff I've been like, because it's fun when you're packing, shipping your first couple orders. It's not as fun when you're like every night, just like printing labels, packing, and just it becomes a slog.
That's another job.
And so when I heard about FBA, I was like, oh, duh, this is amazing. So we ship it into Amazon. It was like 500 units. And that was 2017, which was, I mean, you were on Amazon at that time. That was the land of the fidget spinner.
It was.
And so
the momentum.
Yeah, the spinner took over kind of like all of Amazon for a hot season there. It was like 3 months of just, you know, you look at the search volume, it just went up and straight back down. But because our toy was it wasn't a fidget spinner, but it was fidgety, you know, it was a skill toy. I just started putting some fidget keywords in there, and that thing just started to sell, you know, and that's the product that really caught it basically, I went to Amazon for the passive nature of how they would ship for us. But what I didn't realize was the traffic, you know? And when we saw that, it was like, okay, we got to figure this out. How do you actually reverse engineer that to get in front of the traffic? Because that was totally a miraculous kind of like timing thing that happened that I couldn't have planned. So that's where we started digging into courses and trainings and YouTube and Helium 10 and all the things that, you know, have really brought us to where we are today.
That's a fantastic story. I love it. So how do you help people get, you know, what we call, what the heck do you sell answered? How do you help them discover that product then?
Yeah. I mean, it is like, I feel like it's shifted, you know, like we used to back then, it used to be all about the data, you know, hey, you know, there's software that shows you where the demand is. And I like to give an analogy. I mean, I know your audience is pretty seasoned with Amazon typically, but if anyone's new to it, the best analogy I have is it's like a big supermarket, and we're looking for aisles in the supermarket where there's a lot of people going down the aisles, right? But there's not a lot of great products on the shelf. They're still picking stuff up, putting it in their cart, but there's not a lot of great products. And that's how we still teach, because it's like, might as well get in front of that traffic. But I think what we're seeing now is that a lot of our moms, the ones that really thrive and go the distance, they not only have done that research with software, figuring out what aisles are search terms on Amazon, or people searching and there's traffic for, but they're also kind of pairing that with something they're passionate about, right? Something that is like, man, I'm really into this niche. I know a lot about this thing. Because there's so much, I mean, you can do a lot off data and off reading the reviews and, doing the research. But the kendama thing I was good at because I was actually a kendama player. I'd actually spent hours with the toy, right? When someone, just is like, oh, this looks like a good keyword, a good traffic, and they make a kendama, it's not going to be as good as someone who's like has hours with the toy, right?
Yeah.
And so we see that working really well right now, where it's a combination of using software. For people listening, you don't need it. I think that's a big misconception. You don't need any ideas to start with Amazon. You can go to kind of Amazon and start using some of these softwares and start digging around.
Yeah.
And sometimes the ideas will come to you.
Correct.
But then how we qualify them is typically like, do you have, a passion or connection to this product or the person that it serves? That's going to like help you get past the bumps in the road. Because if you don't have that, then it's easier to quit on yourself. If you don't have like this kind of like, you don't have this thing driving you that's beyond just like, oh, this is a widget that sells well.
We call it purpose over profit. If purpose can substantiate the business and connectivity and just, even if it overlaps with passion, but understanding the purpose and outcome, not just your self-centered purpose and outcome, which is a byproduct of that. We call that profit. It could be profit in lifestyle, profit in changing locations, profit in relationships, and of course, monetary profit. Purpose will always overcome that if you can stay focused on that, and then those things will be a byproduct of it. It's good to hear you echo that because not everybody says that, right? It's all about where the business is and how fast you can grow. And as I was telling you earlier, that's not always the right thing to do. And you can go out and gain the world's approval and get as much money or whatever situation you want to go after things, but it may not be the right thing. And the most difficult part is saying no to the world. And that's very challenging because I think today with so many people concerned about inflation and monetary system and things that we're kind of dealing with and all these what ifs and there's rumors of wars and all this other stuff occurring, they're kind of hesitant to move forward. And I say, this is your chance to be robust. This is your chance to be bold, act courageous. This is your opportunity, that we still have to get out there and make that occur. Would you echo any of those sentiments or add on to it or change any of that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember in 2020, so many people thought the world was ending and had all different scares. And there definitely were legitimate ones. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to bash that. But I also saw like our students that chose to lean in to an opportunity, to a business, to a vehicle that was working. I feel like that set them on this amazing trajectory to create this like legacy business of their desires. And I think anytime in like seasons of turmoil or when the news is blasting all the what ifs, get afraid, get fearful, all these things, there will always be entrepreneurs. There will always be families that rise to the occasion and say like, this is my moment. This is my moment to not live in fear, not live in the what ifs. And I think you can take calculated risk and all of that. But like, I really think like there's no better time, there really isn't. And again, going back to that purpose that you have and connecting with it is so important when there are like those bumpy moments, because there will be in life. There's bumpy moments in entrepreneurship. There's bumpy moments, but I think there's no better time than to lean in now. And there will always be a what if of like, oh, I should do this later. Oh, this isn't the right time. Like that will always be, and everyone's outcome, no matter what. It's never perfect. You just have to be willing to step out.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. That's what I very well said, Chelsea, that, just if you had to think about a perfect time to go, you probably would never go. And I probably wouldn't be sitting in front of you if IBM hadn't said, hey, you got a couple options, take the Argentina gig or take your early retirement. I might have still been there for a while longer and maybe got stuck in that. So I'm actually grateful that why in the road kicked up, because at that point I'm just like, well, kick rocks. So this is my chance to go for it. And then the year after, nothing went anywhere near plan between getting married and leaving the job and finding out we were pregnant. And then my wife finding out she was very sick and having to go on bed rest, and then having to leave her job. So all in the space of 1 year, we went from, high employment, everything going great, to having a family, getting married, starting a new business, and then my wife being sick and no income. So if you think there's an opportunity to go, you just have to go with it. You have to go with it and be bold, realizing that, yes, failure points will occur, as I'm sure you would agree, but to quit is to fail completely. And those who continue to push and persevere like you will continue to see opportunity, and a little luck always jumps into business just being at the right place at the right time along the way, right? And
Yeah.
it's always a good thing. You guys have a wonderful story. If there is a question I didn't ask you in our conversation so far, is there something that you'd like to say or answer that I didn't ask yet?
I mean, I'm just like resonating with that last point. So I really want people to hear it because I mean, we've been in a lot of rooms with high level entrepreneurs, people way beyond us, and they've all figured this out. You know, they've all figured this thing out. And what I kind of like to like, not to get too woo woo on you, but I feel like there is kind of like, there's like laws in the world, right? There's like gravity, like you drop your pen, it's going to fall and hit the ground. But there's also laws that overcome those laws, like the law of lift. When you go fast enough in a plane, the law of lift overcomes the law of gravity. And so in seasons, like there's this ancient proverb that says they're like those who watch the wind and the rain, like they won't plant. And so they don't harvest, right? Like if you're watching the stuff that's going on in the world and you're getting caught up in that fear, we saw a very similar thing happen in 2020. Like you're not going to plant and you're not going to harvest. And so if you want to break like fear off of your life and you want to get into momentum, the best time to do it is in those moments when it's kind of coming against you. Because when you act in boldness, it's not opposite of fear. It's actually greater. It'll actually overcome that thing. And so we're big believers. We call that strategy the flip the root strategy, where you kind of like, what's the root of this thing? Like in COVID, there was kind of like a root of like scarcity in the air, right? Like you would go to the stores and like, it was like people were just like trying to grab this hand sanitizer and the toilet paper. There's like scarcity, right? So what we did even as a community is like, let's operate in generosity because it's not opposite, it's greater, and it flips that root and it breaks off the scarcity. So now you're no longer operating under that scarcity. You're like, I'm going to pay for this person's coffee intentionally to like not be under that thing. And so I think entrepreneurs who are, you see on these podcasts and you see running the businesses, they figured this thing out, that there are laws that overcome these things that hold a lot of people back. And it's something that's scary, but it will diffuse that thing. And not to say it's not going to come back up.
No,
but yeah, it comes back up. It keeps knocking on your door.
It always comes back in some way, some shape, some form. It just changes the structure. The rings grow as experience grow, and there's different risks. Somebody's 500 is another person's 5,000 is another person's 500,000 and 5 million. It's just different levels of risk that grow along the way, and everybody has to even achieve different levels of risk no matter what station they are at. The challenge is to just continue to. I read a book a while ago that helped me through this long time ago called "Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways." By Susan Jeffries, and it just helped remind you that ask yourself what's the worst that can happen, and then realize that we live in riches in America, in abundance, and it doesn't always feel that way for some folks, but we have water and run, and there's food with stores, and there's all this amazing stuff that we have in our country that others don't, and so we got to remember to keep our base understanding right, and then realize we have such a great place to launch and such a great place to be courageous when we can step out. And it's very well said what you just said. To echo that, last question, if you don't mind. If there was somebody in my power within my network to introduce you to, who would it be that you'd like to sit down, have lunch, talk with? Any name you can think of. We've had stuff from like Andre 3000 to Elon Musk to, Jim Collins. Is there somebody? Tony Robbins?
Man, I feel like, our community like is earlier stage Amazon. And so the next step is honestly what you guys do with exits and things like that. So anyone you can connect us with on that front, that, is into selling actually the business. I think that's the next step for a lot of our members.
Awesome.
To really take this vehicle that's producing money, but let's turn it into generational wealth, right? And so,
you might know one or two people that can help you with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah, hearing those stories, like stories are so powerful of adversity and what they did and getting that like longer term vision. Again, sometimes it's like with kids, or with spouses. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but like sometimes somebody will be saying the same thing to you over and over, and you just need to hear it differently. So
comes from a different angle. Yeah, always good. Different language, different voice. Well, thank you so much for both joining me today. Show notes and stuff will be below to connect with everything that they're doing at the Rainmaker family. I would encourage you guys to check that out. And just check out their podcast and listen to what they're doing, of course, and follow along. Because I think if you heard some really great things today, which I did, then you guys are wanting to continue to connect with Stephen and Chelsea. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.